power in Reno is gone when I pull into the last gas station that still has a handwritten sign taped to the glass. Cash only, limit 10 gallons, no refunds. The pumps run on a portable generator that coughs and changes pitch every time someone squeezes a handle. And nobody is talking in full sentences anymore. People point. People snap. People watch each other's hands. I keep my eyes on the nozzle, on the mirror of my truck, on Sophie's face in the passenger seat. She has her window cracked an inch and her seatbelt on, even though we are parked. She does not look relaxed. She looks ready to move. I do not have a plan that fixes the world. I have a plan that gets my sister out of a city where the rules stopped working. I am a surveyor, or I was, and my brain does what it always does when people panic. It looks for lines, routes, terrain that slows bodies down, terrain that hides. The first reports on the radio say violence, then sickness, then the word infected gets used for the first time, and a few minutes later, nobody trusts the radio anymore. Cell service dies in chunks. Police scanners turn into noise and short bursts of yelling. Sophie holds her phone in both hands, staring at a map that refuses to load, then sets it down and looks at me for direction. She is not helpless. She is practical. She is waiting because she knows my head stays clear when everything gets loud. I put the nozzle back, cap the tank, and do not argue with the guy who tells me the price changed again. I hand over cash and leave without looking at the receipt. The line behind me has at least 12 vehicles, and more are coming, rolling in slow, forcing their way into the lot. A woman in a scrubs top is crying near the air pump. A kid is yelling at his dad to hurry up. Two men argue over a plastic fuel can. One of them puts a hand on the other's chest, then pulls it away fast when the second man's eyes go flat and cold. Nobody wants to be the first person to start a fight, but everybody is building toward it. We get back on the road, and I do not head toward the freeway. I cut through side streets that I know, streets that are narrow enough to slow down the mess. There are cars abandoned at angles that do not make sense unless someone stopped in the middle of a decision and never finished it. There is a grocery store with its front doors hanging crooked, the glass gone. There is a bus stopped at an intersection with its hazard lights blinking, and nobody inside. I pass a sidewalk where a man sits with his back against a wall, knees pulled up, arms wrapped around his legs. He is staring at nothing. Sophie looks at him until he is out of view, then keeps looking behind us through the rear window. I do not say the scary parts out loud. I keep my words simple. I tell Sophie we are going east. I tell her we are going to the mountains. I tell her we are not stopping in towns. She nods, then reaches into her backpack and pulls out a folded stack of paper maps that I made her print months ago, back when she teased me for keeping hard copies of everything. She spreads them across her lap and holds them down with her forearm. The paper shakes a little from the road vibration and the way her hands keep moving, adjusting the corners. I keep one hand on the wheel, one hand close to the gear selector, ready to drop into reverse if I have to. We cross an intersection where a police cruiser sits with its driver door open. The light bar is off. The engine is still running. The radio inside makes a constant crackle that I can hear through my closed window. On the sidewalk nearby, a person is face down, still. I do not slow down to check. Sophie turns her head away and presses her fingers against her lips. Not crying, not speaking, just holding it in. A mile later, I see my first infected close enough to be sure. He is a man in a light jacket, walking with his shoulders stiff and his feet wrong, stepping too heavy. He drifts into the street without looking for cars. He turns his head toward my truck, and his face is not empty. It is focused. That focus is what makes me clamp down on the steering wheel and swing wide around him. He lunges once, and it is quick, too quick for someone who looks half dead. His hand slaps the side of my bed, and his fingers drag on the paint for a second. Then he loses footing and stumbles, and I am past him. Sophie does not scream. She does not panic. She whispers, "Did you see his eyes?" I answer, "Yes." I do not give her anything else. I keep driving. I do not let her convince herself that it was a drugged person or a drunk. I also do not let her spiral into naming every possibility. We do not have time for that kind of conversation. Time is a resource now. We make it out of Reno's sprawl and into the long, open stretches where the sky feels bigger and the buildings thin out. The road is not empty. There are cars heading both directions, some packed with mattresses strapped down, some empty, some driving too fast, some crawling. One truck blows past us on the shoulder, rocks spraying. A few minutes later, I see it again, sideways into a ditch, the front end crushed against a culvert. Nobody is standing near it. I keep the radio off. The noise is worse than silence. Silence gives me room to listen for our own problems. The truck's engine temp, the sound of tires, any odd tapping or vibration. I do not want surprises. Sophie watches the horizon and calls out anything that looks wrong. Smoke, a stopped line of vehicles, movement near the road. She is steady now, locked into a job. It helps her. It helps me. The farther east we go, the more the world looks normal in small pieces. A ranch gate closed, a windmill turning, a mailbox with a name on it. Then it breaks again when we pass a rest area where the trash cans are overturned and the bathrooms have their doors kicked in. There is a dark stain on the concrete near the picnic tables that I do not examine. There is also a sound, distant, not a siren, not a car horn, a thin rising shout that keeps going until it cracks. I keep driving. Sophie asks, "How far?" I tell her, "Grant Range, eastern Nevada, past where people want to go." She knows the name because she has heard it in my stories. Years ago, I did a contract out there. Not a mine, not a town, just a mineral exploration site that never became anything. Old drill pads, old stakes, old maps that lived in a drawer. When the company folded, nobody cleaned it up. There are adits out there cut into the rock. One of them collapsed partway in, and I remember it because it bothered me. An opening that went into darkness and then shut down in rubble. Back then, I thought about it in the abstract way people think about abandoned places. Now I think about it as a hole with a roof. We do not reach the mountains by some dramatic turning point. We reach them by running out of good options and choosing the last one that still feels controlled. The road turns from flat to gentle climbs. The air gets cooler. The traffic thins out, not because people are safe, but because people do not have reasons to head this way. There are no big stores, no hospitals, no promise of rescue. At a two-lane junction with a faded sign, I see a group of vehicles parked crooked on the shoulder. Two men stand near a sedan with its trunk open. A woman sits on the ground with her back against a tire. A kid leans against a door, eyes half closed. One of the men raises a hand in a slow wave, then points at my truck and makes a motion that could mean stop. It could mean talk. It could mean share. It could mean something worse. I do not stop. I ease left, giving them space and keep rolling. Sophie watches them through the side mirror until they are behind us. She says, "Do you think they are okay?" I answer, "I do not know." That is the truth. The other truth is that okay does not matter anymore. What matters is what they do when they need something. The first night, We sleep in the truck in a shallow wash off a dirt spur road. I tuck the vehicle behind a low rise so the headlights do not flash across open land when someone passes. We eat from a bag of trail mix and a can of beans that Sophie opens with a small manual opener. No fire, no lights. I keep the windows up, then crack mine a fraction for air. The desert night is cold enough to keep me from relaxing. I do not let Sophie take the first watch. I tell her to sleep. She does not argue long. Her eyes close, her head leans against the headrest, and she is out in minutes. The way someone sleeps when fear has been held back all day and finally wins. I stay awake and listen. Coyotes, far off. A vehicle once, distant. Wind brushing across sage and rock. I run my fingers along the edge of the steering wheel without realizing it until I force myself to stop. I check my mirrors so often that it becomes a pattern. When the sky starts to lighten, I let my shoulders drop a little and close my eyes for short stretches, never long, never deep. By mid-morning, we are off the main route and climbing into the Grant Range on a road that used to service equipment and nothing else. The truck bumps over ruts and scattered rock. I keep the speed low to avoid a blowout. We pass old tracks where other vehicles have come through recently. That makes me tighten up in a way I do not speak about. The whole point of this place is that nobody wants it. Fresh tracks mean somebody wanted it. Sophie leans forward, scanning the slopes. Are we sure this is still empty? I tell her, we find out before we commit. The exploration site is not a town. It is a scar on the mountain, cut in stages. Flat pads scraped into the hillside. Old lengths of pipe half buried in dirt. A few wooden stakes bleached gray. Rusted drums with their lids missing. It looks dead and quiet, which should be comforting. It is not comforting. Quiet does not mean safe. Quiet means hidden things can stay hidden. I park the truck behind a small stand of pinyon and juniper and kill the engine. The sudden silence makes the place feel bigger. Sophie stays inside for a moment, looking at me for the go-ahead. I grab binoculars, a small pack, and the rifle that I never expected to own 2 weeks ago. It is a plain bolt-action hunting rifle, no fancy parts. It is not a symbol. It is a tool. I move on foot first, slow and careful. I check the main pad, the slope above it, the shallow gullies that could hide a camp. I look for smoke, for trash, for fresh scat, for boot prints. There are prints. Some are old. Some are new. The new ones head toward the adit area, then vanish in rock. I follow the line until I see the opening. The adit mouth is half hidden behind a fall of rock and brush. The entrance is low and jagged, not a clean tunnel anymore. I remember it being worse than this. Someone has moved stone. Someone has cleared enough to crawl in. That makes my throat go dry, and I do not describe it that way to myself. I just pause, steady my breathing through my nose, and listen harder. Sophie comes up behind me a few minutes later, staying quiet. She crouches beside a boulder and whispers, "Is it open?" I whisper back, "Enough." We do not crawl in right away. We circle above it, using the slope to look down into the area. There are no tents, no vehicles, no stacked supplies, no obvious sign of someone living here. That does not mean nobody is inside. A hidden base can look empty from the outside. And I know that, because that is the whole idea we came here with. I pick up a fist-sized rock and toss it into the adit mouth. It bounces, clacks, then stops. No answer. No movement. I wait a full minute, watching the dark. Sophie's hand rests on my sleeve, not pulling, not pushing, just making contact. I decide to go in first. I clip a small headlamp around my forehead and turn it on only when my body blocks the entrance. I keep the beam low, sweeping the ground. The air is cooler inside. damp in a way desert air is not. The tunnel goes in maybe 20 feet before the collapse thickens. Someone has dug a narrow path along the left side, reinforcing it with scrapboards and chunks of timber. Not professional work, just enough to keep rock from shifting onto a crawling body. I back out and tell Sophie, "Someone was here, not now, I do not hear it." She asks, "Do we leave?" I look at the slope, the tracks, the empty pads, the wide land behind us. Leaving means driving back into roads full of people and unknowns. Staying means committing to a place someone else has already thought about. I choose the risk I can manage. I say, we stay, but we make it ours. The first work is ugly and slow. We widen the crawl path, moving stone by hand, dragging it out in buckets made from cut-down plastic containers. We stack the spoil in shallow piles, then cover it with local rock so it looks like part of the slope. Sophie learns the pattern fast. Darker rock goes on top. Lighter rock stays underneath. We spread it thin, never making a fresh mound that catches light. We do not dig straight. We follow the old line of the adit, clearing what we can, then branching slightly into a pocket where the collapse created a void. That void becomes our first chamber. It is not big. It fits 2 sleeping pads, some bins, our water jugs, and a small work area where we can sit without bumping our heads on rock. We scrape the floor level. We sweep grit into cracks. We keep everything tight. Tight spaces are easier to control. Ventilation is the problem that tries to kill us first, and it does it quietly. The first time we light a small camp stove inside the chamber, the air changes fast. The flame burns wrong. Sophie's eyes narrow, and she turns it off without me asking. She points up at a thin crack in the rock ceiling where a faint draft moves dust. That crack connects to somewhere. That somewhere might be enough if we work with it. We spend 2 days finding the fissures that breathe. Not all cracks are useful. Some dead end. Some pull air in but do not push smoke out. We test with a strip of fabric tied to a stick, watching the tug. Sophie marks each good spot with a small scratch on the rock that only we will recognize. We rig a vent path using flexible tubing scavenged from an old equipment cache, then seal joints with tape and cloth. It is not perfect, but it moves air. We learn to cook only at certain times, when wind direction outside favors pulling smoke up and away. We learn to keep the cooking flame small. We learn to never let a glowing ember show near the entrance. At night, we eat cold food more often than not. Noise discipline becomes another rule. Every rock we move makes a sharp click that echoes down the adit. Every dropped tool becomes a signal that can travel. We start laying old blankets and thick cloth on the floor and work areas to catch sound. We wrap metal handles. We slow our movements. We turn into quiet people without talking about it. Water comes from a narrow spring seep about a half-mile down the slope, hidden in brush and rock. It is not a river. It is not dramatic. It is a small trickle that gathers into a shallow pool. We filter it through cloth and boil it when fuel allows. When fuel does not allow, we use purification tablets that Sophie pulled from a camping kit. We never take more than we can carry without spilling. Spilled water on dry ground makes a trail. Trails lead to people. Food at first is what we brought. Then it becomes what we can find without leaving sign. We set small snares in brush lines where rabbits run. We check them early and late, moving in different paths each time. We keep the work clean and quick. We do not leave remains near the base. We do not talk about feelings when we eat. We talk about the next task. That keeps the day moving. That keeps our heads from turning on us. Sophie is the one who insists on a routine. She draws a chart on paper, simple, daily. Vent check, water run, sweep the adit, repack gear, inventory. She keeps it practical, not obsessive, and it helps. I start waking up before her, not because I feel heroic, but because mornings are when my mind is sharp, and the air outside carries sound farther. I go to the entrance and watch the slope for movement. I note every new track. Most are animals, some are not. One week in, I find boot prints that do not belong to us, cutting across the pad above the adit and heading east. The heel pattern is different. The stride is longer. Whoever walked there moved without stopping. I crouch and press my fingers into the edge of one print, testing how fresh the crumble is. It is recent. Sophie sees my face when I come back into the chamber. She does not ask for a speech. She just says, "We keep the entrance tighter." We do. We build a screen of brush and rock that can be pulled aside from inside. We stack stones in a way that looks random from the outside, but can be moved fast by someone who knows the trick. We add a second exit, not a full tunnel, just a narrow crawl that leads into a crack line above the main opening, a place where a body can slide out if the main mouth is blocked. We do that work over many days, moving stone a little at a time, never making the outside change too quickly. The infected show up less than I expect, and that becomes its own problem. The first month, I see maybe 3 of them in the distance, drifting along a wash line below the pads. One of them stops and turns his head toward the slope, then keeps going. He does not climb. He does not search. He just moves. That should be a relief. It is not. It tells me the infection did not flood this region the way it flooded Reno. It tells me the danger here is mostly human, and humans are harder to predict. We do a radio check every day. I have a small portable radio and a hand-crank charger. Some days the charger works. Some days it feels dead no matter how long I turn it. The airwaves are mostly empty. Once I catch a fragment of a voice, a man speaking fast, then nothing. Once I catch music for 10 seconds, then static. Sophie asks me to keep trying, and I do, because it gives her something to hope for that is not purely imagination. Weeks turn into months without a clean calendar. We mark time by fuel consumption, by the way canned food stacks shrink, by the way Sophie's hair grows and gets tied back tighter, by the way my hands roughen from rock and dirt. The base becomes more than a hiding spot. It becomes a machine we maintain. It gives us control over temperature, over light, over exposure. It gives us a place where we can close a barrier and know what is on the other side. That kind of certainty becomes addictive. Sophie starts talking less about going back and more about staying. Not staying forever, just staying until the world makes sense again. I do not tell her the world might never make sense again. I also do not feed her false comfort. I keep our tasks moving and our options open. I keep our packs ready. I insist we can leave on 10 minutes' notice. Sophie agrees, but she also starts storing things in neat rows, labeling with a pen. It is her way of building walls. The storm that almost exposes us comes in late afternoon, sudden and violent. The sky darkens over the ridge and the air shifts, wind snapping hard against brush. Thunder rolls across the range, not distant, close. The first drops hit the dirt and turn it dark in spots. Then the rain comes heavy enough to blur the world. I move fast, pulling our entrance screen tighter, sealing gaps where water could run in. Sophie grabs bins and pushes them back from the floor line where seepage might reach. Rain in the desert does not soak in gently. It runs, it gathers. It becomes a moving sheet that takes loose soil with it. I hear rock shift outside, a clatter that is not our hands. I go to the mouth and peek through a crack in our screen. Water is pouring down the slope in thin streams, carrying grit. It hits our camouflaged spoil area and tries to peel it open. I swear under my breath without using words that would get bleeped out, and I shove on rock with both hands, pressing it back into place. Sophie crawls up beside me and holds stones steady while I wedge others in. We work in near darkness, headlamps off, feeling for placement. The rain lasts maybe 30 minutes. It feels longer. When it stops, the world outside is quieter but changed. The slope has fresh streaks where water ran. That can hide our disturbance, but it can also reveal it. I wait until full dark to go out and check. I move slow, stepping where rock is solid, avoiding soft mud that takes prints. The camo holds. Barely. Our spoil is still thin and scattered enough to pass for natural mess. The entrance screen looks normal from 5 feet away. From 10 feet away, it looks normal. I stand there in the dark, listening, and realize how quickly a storm can undo months of careful work. I go back inside and find Sophie sitting with her knees up, hands clasped, eyes on the floor. She looks up and asks one question. "Are we still hidden?" I tell her, "Yes. I mean it for now." The months that follow are the quiet kind that eats at people. No infected, no strangers, no radio. The world becomes a narrow loop of tasks. I catch myself staring at the same rock seam for too long. Sophie catches herself listening for sounds that are not there. We argue once about nothing, about a missing can of peaches that turns out to be under a blanket. The argument is sharp and short. Then we both stop, embarrassed, because we recognize the real source. We are trapped in success. The base works too well. One morning I wake up and the air feels wrong. Not thick, not smoky, just still. The vent strip we tied near the ceiling does not move. That means the fissure draft changed. Wind outside changed. If we cook at the wrong time, smoke will back up. If we sleep without airflow, the chamber will feel stale and unpleasant, in ways that make people do stupid things. I crawl into the vent access and check for blockage. Dust and a small tumble of grit have slid into the tubing. I clear it with a stick and my hands, working slow to avoid tearing the improvised joints. Sophie waits behind me with a flashlight covered by cloth so it does not cast harsh beams. When the airflow returns, Sophie exhales and says, "We cannot get lazy." I answer, "We do not." But I know the truth. Staying hidden is not a one-time build. It is daily maintenance, daily discipline. If we slip once, the base becomes a trap that someone else can use against us. The stranger arrives on a day that starts normal. I am coming back from the spring with 2 full jugs and a small bag of gathered dry wood when I see a shape on the valley floor below our slope. At first, I think it is a rock. Then the shape shifts. A person is crawling, one arm dragging, one leg trailing. A rifle lies beside him, long and dark against the pale dirt. He reaches for it, then collapses again. I freeze behind a juniper and watch. My brain runs through possibilities fast. Bait, trap, a dying man, a man pretending. I look around him with binoculars, scanning the brush lines and the higher ridges. I do not see movement. I do not see a second person. I do not see an obvious overwatch position. That does not mean it is clear. It means whoever set this up knows how to hide. I backtrack without taking the straight path. I return to the adit and slip inside, closing our screen behind me. Sophie looks up from sorting supplies and reads my face instantly. I set the jugs down slow, then say, "Someone is in the valley, injured. He has a rifle." Sophie stands. She does not ask for details first. She moves toward the entrance. We have to help. I step in front of her. We have to be careful. She looks past me, jaw set. If we leave him out there, he dies. If he dies out there, someone finds him. Someone follows the trail. That hits me because it is practical, not emotional. A dead body in our valley is a beacon. It means scavengers. It means questions. Sophie continues, voice low but firm. If we bring him in, we control the situation. Control. That word has become a drug. I do not want to admit it. I still hear it. I nod once, then say, outer chamber only. No deep access. We keep our packs ready. We move down the slope with our weapons visible but not raised. We walk in a pattern that uses cover, stepping behind brush and rock, stopping often, scanning. The injured man looks older than me by maybe 10 years, maybe more. Sunburned, dust-caked. His face is drawn tight, eyes half open. There is a dark stain on his pant leg near the thigh, spread wide and dried at the edges. He tries to push himself up when he sees us, then fails and drops back to his elbows. Sophie reaches him first and crouches beside his head, hands open so he sees she is not grabbing for his rifle. She says, "Do not move, we will help, but you stay calm." His voice comes out rough and thin. Water. I keep my rifle angled down but ready and say, "Where did you come from?" He looks at me with effort. North. Came through the low passes. I did not know anyone lived out here. Sophie pulls a bottle from her pack and tips it to his mouth in small amounts. He drinks, then coughs once, then swallows again. His hands shake when he tries to brace himself. He glances at my rifle, then at Sophie, then back at me. He is tracking the power dynamic. He understands it. I say, "Name." He hesitates. Ray Denson. Sophie says, "Ray, can you stand?" He tries. His leg buckles. He grimaces without making a sound that would help him. That tells me something. He is used to pain. He is used to staying quiet. That also tells me something else. He is either disciplined, or he is trained, or he has learned hard lessons. None of those options make me relax. We get him to the outer chamber with work that feels endless. Sophie takes most of his weight. I carry his rifle, keeping it pointed away. The rifle is not a hunting piece. It is a long-range setup with a large scope and a bipod. Clean, maintained. That is not a poor man's tool. That is not something someone finds in a trunk by accident. We do not bring him into our main living space. We keep him in the rough work pocket near the entrance where the air is colder and the floor is uneven. Sophie lays down a pad and gets out our first aid kit. I kneel by Ray's leg and cut the fabric carefully. The wound is not pretty, but it is not a gore scene. It is a puncture, deep, with swelling and dirt worked into the edges. A bullet passed through. It missed the bone, maybe. That is a narrow line between walking and dying out here. Sophie cleans the area with boiled water cooled in a mug and wipes it with cloth. Ray watches her hands and clenches his jaw. He stays still. He is trying to look tough for strangers in a cave, which is a bad use of energy. But I understand why he does it. Sophie wraps the wound tight and gives him a small dose of antibiotics from our stash. She does not ask my permission. I let it happen, even though those pills are a finite resource, and we do not know if Ray will become a problem tomorrow. When Ray is stable, I ask again, "Who shot you?" He swallows, eyes closing for a second. "Sweep team." Sophie pauses mid-rap. "Military?" Ray opens his eyes and looks at the rock ceiling, then back to us. Uniforms, vehicles, radios, orders. I do not know what flag means anything anymore. I know what they do. I keep my voice flat. What do they do? Ray answers. They clear pockets. They do not rescue. They do not negotiate. They move through towns and camps and do the same thing every time. Anyone armed gets treated as hostile. Anyone unarmed gets told to line up, then gets taken away. I saw trucks. I saw people in the back. I did not see them come back. Sophie's face tightens. She does not cry. She does not melt down. She asks the next practical question. Why are they doing it? Ray shrugs with what little energy he has. Containment, control, clearing roads, making zones. Somebody thinks the map can be fixed by erasing pieces. We do not sleep much that night. Sophie insists on staying near Ray for the first few hours in case he spikes a fever. I sit in the shadow near the entrance with my rifle across my knees and watch the dark beyond our screen. I listen for anything that suggests Ray is not alone. No voices, no footsteps, no rock clatter, only wind and the small sounds of our own space. Ray sleeps in broken stretches. When he wakes, he asks for water and nothing else. Sophie gives it to him. She also asks him small questions in short bursts, not interrogating, but building a picture. Where did he start? Who was with him? Where did he last see the sweep team? Ray answers some, avoids others. He says he was part of a group north of here. He says the group got hit hard and scattered. He says he ran for 2 days, sleeping in washes, moving when he heard engines. Sophie looks at me once and says quietly, "If this is true, we cannot stay." I do not answer right away. My mind goes to the base, to the months of work, to the routines, to the control. Leaving means stepping back into randomness. Staying means betting the base can stay hidden from organized search. That is a different kind of enemy than desperate scavengers. I say, we verify. Verification is hard without contact, so we do it the only way we can. Observation. On the second day after Ray arrives, I climb to a ridgeline that gives a view of the lower road. I bring binoculars and a small scope, and I tuck myself behind rock, where my silhouette does not pop against sky. Sophie stays back with Ray and keeps the entrance sealed. We do not split up fully anymore. Hours pass with nothing. Heat builds, then fades. Wind changes direction twice. Near late afternoon, I see dust plumes far out on the valley floor. Not one vehicle, several, moving in a staggered line. They do not drive like lost tourists. They drive like people who have done this before. They stop once near a cluster of abandoned vehicles, then move again. One vehicle pulls off the main line, cuts toward a dirt spur, then returns. Search pattern, not random. I do not see markings from this distance. I do not hear engines from this distance. I see motion and intent. That is enough. I back down from the ridge and return by a long route that avoids leaving a straight trail. When I slip into the adit, Sophie is waiting with a tight face. Ray is awake, sitting up with his back against rock. He watches me enter with eyes that track every detail. I tell Sophie, vehicles, more than 3, search pattern. Sophie looks at Ray. He told the truth. Ray does not celebrate. He just says, "You do not have much time." Time becomes a tool again. We move fast, but not chaotic. We shut down anything that makes smoke. We eat cold. We pack our essentials into 2 go bags. Water, medical, ammo, maps, the radio, the crank charger, a small amount of food. We bury what we cannot carry in a cache deeper in a side pocket, wrapped in plastic and sealed under rock. We do not do it to come back. We do it because refusing to plan for return feels wrong in a way that makes people reckless. Sophie wants to take Ray with us, which means we move at Ray's pace. Ray's pace is slow, his leg is swollen. He can hobble with support, but he cannot climb hard terrain quickly. Ray knows it. He says, "Leave me a rifle and water and go." Sophie snaps, "No." I cut in before an argument turns into wasted energy. We decide after dark. For now, Ray stays quiet. Ray nods once. He does not argue. That also tells me something. He is not begging. He is not pleading. He is calculating. That night, we hear the first human sound close enough to matter. It is not voices in our valley. It is the distant chop of engines that could be trucks, and once a brief flare of light from far off, bright and white, then gone. Searchlights. Maybe. Sophie sits near the entrance, not shaking, not dramatic, but her hands keep moving, tightening straps, checking knots. Her mind is trying to do work because sitting still makes thoughts grow teeth. Ray speaks in a low voice. If they are here, they will not miss a cave. I answer, not if they do not know it exists. Ray looks at me. Someone cleared this adit before you. You know that. Sophie says, "Stop." Ray does not stop. He keeps his voice even. Someone used this place. Someone left signs, patterns. You cannot hide disturbance from people who make a living looking for it. That is true. It is also not useful unless it comes with solutions. I ask, "What do you suggest?" Ray says, "You move before daylight. You do not leave the valley by the obvious route. You take the high cut east, then drop into the next drainage. You do not go toward towns. You go where nobody wants to chase you." He glances at Sophie. "You already know how to disappear. That is why you are here." Sophie's eyes narrow. "How do you know what we know?" Ray shrugs carefully. "I watch, I listen. You built more than a camp. You built rules." I do not like the way he says it, but I keep my response calm. "You can barely walk. How do you expect to keep up?" Ray looks at the floor for a moment, then says, "I do not keep up. I slow you down. That is why I told you to leave me." Sophie's mouth tightens. She looks away, then back, making a decision. "We do not leave him." I look at her and see the line she is drawing. She is not being naive. She is choosing what kind of person she wants to stay. The base gave us power. Power makes people do quiet, ugly things because it feels efficient. Sophie is pushing back against that. I tell her, "If he gets us killed, that will not be noble." She answers, "If we decide who gets to live out here, we become the thing we are hiding from." We prepare a compromise that is not comfortable. We do not keep Ray deep. We do not give him free movement. We also do not abandon him in the open. We plan to move him to our secondary crawl exit at first dark, then stage in a crack line above the adit, where the three of us can watch and decide our route once we confirm the sweep pattern. It is risky. It is also the only path that keeps Sophie from resenting me and keeps me from trusting Ray. Before we execute, something shifts outside. A faint scrape. Not wind, not animal. It is a stone rolling under weight. I raise my hand and Sophie freezes. Ray's eyes snap toward the entrance. The silence in the chamber becomes heavy in a way that has nothing to do with air. I slide to the screen and press my face near a gap without moving the brush. I see a shape downslope. A person crouched, moving slow, using rocks for cover. Then I see another, farther back, watching the ridge. Both are men. Both have rifles. They move with discipline, not wandering. That tells me Ray was not just passing through. Someone is hunting him, or someone tracked him. or someone tracked the same signs we tried to erase. I back away and whisper, 2 men, armed, close. Sophie's face goes pale under dirt and low light. She whispers, from the sweep team. Ray speaks without hesitation. Not sweep. Those are trackers. Probably contractors. They work ahead. I keep my voice low. How do you know? Ray's eyes meet mine, because I have seen them work. The next few minutes are pure action. We do not have time for moral discussions. We cut the headlamp. We move bins away from the entrance line. We pull our go bags close. Sophie grips her rifle with both hands. Finger off trigger, stance tight. Ray tries to stand. His leg fails. He bites down hard and forces himself upright anyway, using the wall for support. I make a decision that feels wrong but necessary. I grab Ray's long-range rifle and sling it across my shoulder. I do not trust him with it right now. He does not fight me. He watches me do it and nods once, the way a man nods when he respects a hard call. That nod does not make me like him. It makes me more wary. I whisper to Sophie, secondary exit, now. We move Ray first, guiding him into the crawl that leads up and out. The passage is tight enough that Ray has to drag himself with his arms. I push from behind, careful not to slam rock. Sophie leads, checking ahead, listening. The crawl opens into the crack line above the adit, a slanted space that vents to the surface through brush and stone. From there, we can see down into the valley without presenting full silhouettes. The 2 armed men are closer now. One is near the spring line. The other is moving toward the exploration pad. They are not rushing. They are reading the land. One stops and kneels near a patch of disturbed dirt where my boot heel pressed too deep yesterday. He puts fingers to it, then points. The second man shifts direction without a word. Coordination. Sophie's face is tight. She whispers, they are going to find the entrance. Ray whispers, not if you redirect them. I keep my eyes on the men and ask Ray without looking at him, how? Ray says, noise, movement. Give them a new line to follow that does not end here. Sophie starts to shake her head, then stops and forces herself still. She is thinking. If we make noise, we reveal presence. If we do nothing, they find the adit. The base has made us powerful, but it has also made us predictable. We want to protect it. That desire can trap us. I decide to sacrifice the thing that has been keeping us sane. I decide to risk the base to save us from a direct encounter inside it. I slide back into the crack line, crawl to a spot where I can reach a loose rock shelf, and push. The stones shift and roll, not a full slide, just enough to create a harsh clatter down the slope, away from the adit mouth and toward the east drainage. The sound travels. Both men freeze. One lifts his rifle and scans. The other turns toward the noise and starts moving, fast but controlled. He is not running wild. He is hunting a source. He moves into the drainage line, stepping over brush. The second man follows after a pause, covering. We stay still for a full minute, watching. The men do not come toward the adit. They go toward the drainage. That buys time. It does not solve the problem. Trackers do not abandon a lead just because a rock moved. They confirm, they clear, they return. Ray whispers, now you leave. You do not go back into the hole. You go across the ridge. Sophie looks at me with wide eyes. She does not want to abandon the base. She also sees the truth. The base is no longer just a shelter. It is a liability that 2 armed men are actively investigating. If we retreat into it, we risk being sealed in, smoked out, or forced into a fight in tight space where mistakes multiply. I whisper, "We go." Moving with Ray is ugly and slow, but we do not have a choice. Sophie supports his right side. I take his left when the slope steepens. We cut across rock ribs and brush, staying high, avoiding skyline. We move east, then north, using terrain folds that hide us from the valley floor. The night is cold and clear, and the stars make the world bright enough that I can see shapes without light. Light would be a beacon. We do not use it. Every time Ray's boot scrapes rock, I flinch internally and clamp down on the reaction. Every time Sophie slips, I catch her elbow fast. We do not speak unless needed. When we do speak, it is one or two words. Stop. Down. Wait. After an hour, we reach a saddle that overlooks the next drainage. We crouch behind a boulder and look back. Far behind us, faint in the dark, a small point of light moves near our old pad. One of the trackers has a headlamp or a small flashlight. He is searching near the adit area. He did not fully take the bait. He came back. Sophie whispers, "He is at the entrance." I do not answer with hope. I answer with the next task. Keep moving. We descend into the next drainage in a zigzag that keeps Ray's leg from failing completely. We stop at a narrow stand of trees where a spring line might exist, and we listen for 10 minutes. No engines, no voices, only wind through branches and the small movement sounds of animals. I pull out the radio and turn the dial slow. Static, then faint, a voice fragment. A woman speaking. Not clear enough to catch words. It fades. Sophie hears it too. Her eyes flick to mine. Someone is still broadcasting. I say, maybe far, maybe not safe. Ray watches us from the ground, face tight, legs stretched out. Sweep teams use radio too. Do not trust any single voice. Sophie answers him. We do not trust voices. We trust patterns. That is my line. Hearing her say it makes me feel proud and worried at the same time. And I keep that off my face because feelings do not help here. By early morning, we reach a rock shelf that overlooks a long cut valley. From there, I can see a faint dust plume far away. Vehicles again, moving in a line. The sweep is not a rumor. It is happening. The vehicles are too far to see detail, but I can see the way they spread and converge around features. This is organized. This is methodical. Sophie watches and says quietly, "If they clear everything, where do people go?" Ray answers first. "Nowhere. That is the point. Fewer unknowns." I ask Ray, "Why did you run?" Ray holds my gaze. "Because I did not sign up to erase people." That could be true. It could also be a story Ray uses because it sounds decent. I do not call him out. Not yet. Not here. Not with vehicles in the distance and open ground below. We move again, staying high, crossing into rougher terrain where vehicles struggle. The day heats up. We ration water hard. Ray's face gets gray at the edges. Sophie gives him more than she gives herself, and I see it and let it happen. Because Sophie is the reason we still act human. I am the reason we still act alive. Both matter. By late afternoon, we find something that changes the equation. A small camp hidden under rock overhang, not active, abandoned recently. Ash ring cold, a couple of food wrappers, a torn piece of cloth. More important, a set of tire tracks that head deeper into the range, not back toward roads. That means a group with a vehicle is operating out here and is choosing terrain that avoids sweeps. That group might be dangerous. That group might also be the only kind of group that survives this phase. Sophie looks at the sign and says, "People, we are not alone." Ray's expression changes. He looks away, then back, and says, "That camp is not random." I ask, "What do you know?" Ray hesitates. Then he says, "Trackers do not work alone. They feed information to someone. If you find their feed line, you find their base." Sophie says, "Or you find another trap." We do not chase the camp. We use it to make a new plan. We follow the tire tracks only far enough to understand direction. Then we break off and climb to a ridge that gives us line of sight without stepping into the path. From up there, we see faint movement near a cluster of boulders a mile away. A person, maybe two, moving between cover points. A glint of metal, a vehicle tucked under camouflage netting or brush. Not military, not clean, still organized. Sophie whispers, "Do we approach?" I watch for a long moment and answer, "We do not walk into someone else's house." Ray says, "If the sweep pushes, everyone ends up making deals. You cannot stay invisible forever." I keep my voice low. "We stayed invisible for months." Ray answers, "Until you helped me." Sophie turns on him. "We helped you because you are a person." Ray meets her eyes. "And now you are visible." That is the truth, and it sits between us. The base gave us power over who gets to exist in our valley. We used that power once, choosing to let someone in. That choice did not just change Ray's fate, it changed ours. We wait until full dark to move closer, and even then, we do not approach the camp directly. We circle wide and set up in a spot where we can call out without stepping into their line of fire. I pick a rock outcrop that gives cover and an escape route. Sophie stays slightly behind me with Ray seated between us, supported by a pack. Ray keeps his hands visible. He does not look relaxed. He looks like a man returning to a place he does not fully trust. I call out, loud enough to carry but not screaming, "We are passing through. We do not want trouble. We have an injured man." Silence stretches. Then a voice answers from the dark. A man's voice, flat. "Keep your hands visible. Do not come closer." I answer, "Understood." A flashlight beam sweeps our position once, controlled quick. It lands on Ray and holds. The man in the dark says, "Ray Denson." Ray's shoulders stiffen. He says, "Harlan." So Ray knows them. That means more danger and more clarity at the same time. Sophie looks at Ray, then at me. Her face says a whole sentence without words. "You brought this to us." A man steps into partial light, rifle low but ready. He is not wearing a uniform. He has a beard, a cap, dusty clothes. He looks like any rural guy who adapted fast. Behind him I see a second shape, another man, watching from cover. The first man says, "Ray, you ran with our rifle." His eyes flick to the long-range rifle slung on my shoulder. "And you brought strangers." Ray answers, "I did not run for fun. Sweep teams are cutting the range. Your camp is in their path." The man named Harlan laughs once, no humor. "Sweep teams are in everyone's path. What do you want?" I speak before Ray can steer it. "We want to keep moving. We do not want to fight. We will trade information for water and bandages. Then we go." Harlan's gaze shifts to me. He studies my stance, my gear, Sophie's posture. He sees discipline. He sees we are not tourists. He says, "Information costs." Sophie says, "We can work. We can help move supplies. We can help hide tracks. We know this terrain." Harlan looks at Ray again. "You trust them?" Ray's answer is careful. "I trust that they saved my life. That matters." Harlan does not invite us in warmly. He tells us where to sit. He tells us where not to look. He sends the second man to check our packs in the dark with a small light, quick and efficient. That man does not steal. He inventories. That is worse in some ways because it means system. We get water. Sophie gets fresh bandages. Ray's leg gets rewrapped with cleaner cloth. Harlan listens while Ray describes the sweep pattern and the trackers moving ahead. Harlan asks sharp questions. Where did you see vehicles? What kind? How many? How often? Ray answers with the detail of a man who has watched from cover and survived by remembering. Harlan finally looks at me and Sophie and says, If you were hidden, you are not hidden now. If you move alone, sweep catches you or trackers do. If you stay here, you pull heat onto my camp. So you make yourself useful fast. Or you walk out with what you came in with. Sophie nods. Tell us what to do. We spend the next day doing exactly what Harlan values. Work. We help relocate a cache deeper into rock cracks and brush lines. We erase tracks near the obvious approach. We carry water from a spring line that Harlan's people use. It is controlled labor with guns nearby. But it is still a deal. Sophie moves with focus. Ray sits under watch and rests, leg elevated, eyes always tracking. I catch him looking at the ridge lines repeatedly, checking for movement. He is not relaxed here either. Near late afternoon, a distant engine sound rises, then fades, then rises again. Harlan stiffens and signals. Everyone drops into cover without rushing. There is no panic. That tells me Harlan's camp has been doing this for a while. A vehicle appears in the far valley, moving slow, scanning. It stops, then turns, then stops again. Sweep pattern creeping closer. Harlan murmurs to me without looking, You see what I deal with? I answer, yes. He says, What was your hide? I pause. This is the moment the base comes back as leverage. If I tell him, I give away the one place we built that can outlast a sweep. If I do not tell him, he might decide we are a liability and cut us loose. The base kept us alive. It also gave us power over who gets to exist. I feel that power pressing against my teeth, trying to make me choose selfishly. Sophie looks at me reading the internal fight. She does not speak, but her eyes say something simple. Do not become a gatekeeper. I tell Harlan, an old adit, north side of the range, it is compromised. Harlan accepts the partial truth and does not push for coordinates. He nods once. Compromised means dead. Good. No reason to chase ghosts. That night, Harlan makes his choice. He tells us the camp is breaking before dawn. He tells us the sweep is too close. He tells us there is a fallback route into rough country where vehicles cannot go easily and where a larger group is rumored to exist, a settlement that trades and hides and moves when needed. He does not promise it is safe. He just says it is an option that is not a firing line. Sophie looks relieved in a way she tries to hide. Movement gives her hope. A new structure gives her something to lean on, so Ray looks tense. He asks Harlan quietly, Do you trust that settlement? Harlan answers, I trust that it exists. That is more than most rumors. I sit by a rock and stare into the dark, thinking about our base sealed behind us, full of the life we built in silence. I think about how easy it would be to steer this group toward it, and then decide who gets inside. I also think about how that path ends eventually, with a line at a door and a person with a gun deciding who gets to breathe. That person could be me. That thought makes my stomach turn in a way I do not name out loud. We leave before dawn in a line that stays broken up, moving from cover to cover. The camp erases itself behind us. No open fire, no trash left, no obvious trail. I watch Harlan's people work and recognize the same discipline Sophie and I built in our cave, just applied in the open. Survival is not one method. It is a mindset that keeps adapting. Ray moves better now, supported by a stick and Sophie's shoulder when needed. He does not complain. He also does not try to take control. He stays quiet, eyes scanning the horizons where vehicles might show. I keep the long-range rifle slung and do not return it to him yet. He has not asked. That is another data point I file away. Around midday, we crest a ridge and see a long valley cut ahead with a faint ribbon of road far below. On that road, tiny moving dots appear. Vehicles sweep again. This time closer, Harlan signals for the group to drop lower into rock folds and hold. We hold, silent, watching dust trails in the distance. The vehicles move, stop, pivot, move again, clearing pockets. Sophie whispers to me, "If they keep doing this, nobody stays." I whisper back, "Then we move better." It is not inspiring. It is not comforting. It is the only true thing I have left to offer. Near late afternoon, we reach a narrow canyon mouth where the walls pinch and the ground is rock and scrub, a place that hides movement. Harlan tells us to rest for 10 minutes. People drink small sips of water and check gear. Nobody sprawls out. Nobody relaxes fully. Harlan walks over to me and Sophie and keeps his voice low. "You two did not collapse when Ray showed up. Most people do. Most people either go soft or go brutal. You stayed functional." He pauses, then adds, "If we reach that settlement and it is real, you two will have choices. Be careful with that. Power is a problem out here." I stare at him. "You think we want power?" Harlan looks at the rock around us, then back to me. "You built a hidden base and lived months without contact. That takes control. Control turns into decisions. Decisions turn into rules. Rules turn into power. People start believing their rules are the only way to survive." He shifts his rifle strap and nods toward Sophie. "Your sister is your balance. Do not lose that." We move again. The next hours are rough, climbing over broken terrain that forces careful foot placement. The sun drops. The air cools. Shadows stretch long between rocks. At one point, we pass a shallow depression where something lies half hidden under brush. A body, old, dried, not fresh. No gore description, just the fact of it. A person died here and the desert kept it. Harlan does not stop. Nobody stops. The group absorbs it and keeps moving. That is what this world does now. It teaches people to keep stepping. Later, we hear infected in the distance, faint, a low chorus of irregular sounds. Not close enough to see, but close enough to remind us that the sweep does not erase that threat. The infected still exist. They still wander. They just are not the main danger right now. We reach the edge of the rumored settlement area the next morning, and we do not find a city in the rocks. We find signs, carefully placed markers that mean nothing to outsiders. A small stack of stones arranged with a deliberate gap. A strip of cloth tied low on a branch, color faded but present. A piece of wire looped around a rock in a way that catches the eye only if you are looking for it. Harlan nods once, relief mixed with caution. Real. We do not walk in openly. A voice calls from cover and tells us to stop. Harlan answers with a code phrase. A woman steps out, rifle low, eyes hard, and scans our group. She does not smile. She does not welcome. She evaluates. This is not a rescue. It is a checkpoint. Sophie squeezes my arm once, quick, not fear, not comfort, a reminder. Stay human. I look back toward the ridges we crossed. toward the hidden base we left behind somewhere in the Grant Range. I feel the urge to keep it secret forever. I also feel the urge to use it as leverage, to become the person at the door deciding who gets to exist. Both urges are real. Pretending otherwise would be a lie. When the woman at the checkpoint asks who we are, I answer with the only truth that matters now. We are people who know how to disappear. We are tired of doing it alone. Sophie steps forward beside me and says, "We work. We follow rules that keep people alive. We do not make rules that erase people." Ray stands on his own for a moment, face tight, and says, "Sweep teams are close. Trackers are closer. If you take us in, you move tonight." The woman listens without interrupting, then nods once. "You come in. You keep your weapons visible. You do not wander. You do not threaten our people. You work. You earn your space." We step into the settlement area, which is not a single camp, but a spread of hidden pockets in rock and brush, designed to break up and move. I see water storage tucked under shade. I see solar panels angled low. I see people moving quietly with purpose. No banners, no speeches, no promises, just a system built from hard choices. I understand something then, clear and sharp. Our base did keep us alive. It also made it easy to believe survival meant control. Out here with other people, survival means compromise and constant motion and rules that get negotiated by necessity. Power still exists, but it gets checked by eyes watching and hands working. And the simple fact that nobody gets to be a king in a place that can fold and vanish overnight. Sophie walks beside me, shoulders still tense but posture steady. Ray limps behind us, under guard but not treated as trash. Harlan moves ahead, speaking quietly with the checkpoint woman about routes and sweeps and who saw what. Life continues in a way that is not comfortable but is real. I do not know what happens to Reno. I do not know what happens to the sweep teams long term. I do know what happens next for me in this moment. I keep moving. I keep working. I keep my sister close. I keep my decisions visible enough that Sophie can challenge them when control starts to feel too good. Somewhere behind us, in the Nevada mountains, a hidden hole in rock still exists, packed with the quiet months we lived in. It is a tool, not a throne. I tell myself that twice as we walk deeper into a place that demands discipline without letting it turn into cruelty. And I keep telling myself until the words feel solid enough to hold.